In my previous video, I showed you an example of the dictionary class. In this video, I'll show you an example of a multidimensional array. In a multidimensional array, each element can be an array, and each element in the subarray can also be an array, and so on. For this reason, multidimensional arrays are sometimes referred to as an array of arrays. In this example, I'm going to create a multidimensional array that has two main elements, and each main element will contain a subarray of 4 other elements. I'm going to start with the sort on example I used in part 11 of my video series. I'll start by removing all the objects from the stage. Now I'll add a grid, some text labels, and a button which I'll name BTN Green. In my multidimensional array, the first dimension will be represented by the rows, and the second dimension will be represented by the columns. I'll open my Actions panel. I'll keep my constructor methods and my add children methods. I'm going to change the values for the X and Y arrays, but I'll remove the rest of the code. I'll replace the values for the X and Y arrays like this. I'm going to create a master array that has 2 numbers as elements. Then I'll create a subarray for each element in the master array. I'm going to create a function that will loop through the elements in the master and subarrays and place the objects inside the grid. I'll name my function Place Characters. I'll need a counter to keep track of the position of the elements in the X and Y arrays. This function will contain 2 loops. The first loop will loop through the 2 elements in the master array. The second loop will loop through each element in the subarrays. Now I'll position each object on the stage according to the X and Y values found in the X and Y arrays. And increment the counter. I'll call this function when the movie starts. Now I'll test the movie to see if my characters have been positioned properly. That works. Note that the dwarf is located at row 0, column 3. I'm going to reposition the dwarf by referring to the element at this position. I'll go back to my Actions panel and create a new function. I'll name this function getDwarf. Remember that the dwarf was located at row 0, column 3? I'll reposition the dwarf like this. Then I'll add an event listener for the green button. I'll test the movie again. I'll click on the green button, and now the dwarf has been moved to a new location. This is the last of my 16-part video series on ActionScript arrays. To learn more, visit my website at larrystimson.com.